For my second project, I did a research slideshow on Degas' Little Dancer. Degas' Little Dancer is made out of clay, metal armature, rope, pigmented beeswax, silk and linen ribbon, cotton fill bodice, cotton and silk tutu, linen slippers, a wooden base to support her feet, and even human hair. Although this piece may seem simple, there was a thoughtful process that went into materials to represent this beautiful statue to the best of its ability. From looking at it, you can see how beautiful she looks, and all the color, all the texture makes her very unique. A lot more to look at. Not monochromatic or just one material like most statues, which makes her look very unique. Degas' model was the young Marie van Gotham, who was born on June 7th in 1865. Marie van Gotham was a student at the École de Danse and by 1880 a professional dancer at the Paris Opera. What is interesting about this piece is, from previous sketches, is how concentrated Degas was on perfecting Marie's form. It was even mentioned how frequently he would visit the opera house just so he could study dancers in motion as well as rest, which is how Marie is depicted in the statue. What is the cultural significance? The statue was able to force viewers to confront the corrupt or even shameful side of ballet, which is the cultural class at the center of metropolitan life, which just means higher class, more money, more opportunity, more influence on how things are run in ballet. Just something lower class people don't experience. The lower class, who are referred to as rats, much like the model for this figure, came from working class families and understood the unfairness and corruption around ballet. Therefore, this piece, which was inspired after someone from the working class who was able to not only be a part of ballet, but exceed so many expectations and become a famous ballet dancer at the Paris Opera House. Why this specific work of art? Earlier this month, I had the wonderful opportunity to visit the National Gallery of Art in Washington, D.C., where I got to see various extravagant works of art. This piece stood out to me not only because of its unique materials, but because of the realism and uncanny resemblance to a ballerina's dancing form. Lastly, after learning about gender and the significant impact it has on art was even more moving, especially with this piece. I say this because the artist's intentions was to portray a young girl who dreamed of having an illustrious life in ballet, but who also kept her identity as a girl from the streets of Paris, ultimately showing where she comes from, her gender, and who she is as a person has stayed with her and helped her succeed. Lastly, why gender is so influential. Statues like this are reflections of cultural as well as societal values that they find important, therefore showing that if women, especially lower-class women, are not included in this public and visual depictions, then it sends a message that they are not as important contributors to societal values. I believe that is one reason why Degas chose Marie as his inspiration, not only because of her gender, but because of how she expresses femininity in ballet so beautifully that it made an impact on society, especially how she grew to be such in a respectful status. It's also very interesting because when the statue was first made, it wasn't very desired to be in a museum just because she doesn't have traditional ballet features or maybe even the body type. But I think the story behind it and how she was depicted in her own beauty and her own grace, I think is what really stood out and made an impact in art, and especially gender in art. And that's the end.